We're back, and it's Thursday, and it's game week. Those words in the same sentence, you've never heard a better group of words. We have Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football on the other side of this intro. We're not going to take up any more of your time. You want to hear from Spencer. We want to hear from Spencer. It's the AZ Wildcats podcast. Leave a like, drink your water, don't go anywhere.
Welcome on in, everybody, to the AZ Wildcats podcast, live from Studio K, presented by our friends at Circle K. I am, of course, Damon Fairall. That is Kevin Thomas. We are the AZ Wildcats podcast, coming to you live from PHNX HQ3. And we are excited here to be talking about the Iowa State game coming up just a mere couple of days away, Kevin. 4 p.m. kickoff, of course, 3:30 pregame show and postgame show right after the final whistle. I don't know. I always want to say final buzzer.
Yeah,
when talking
it just sounds
because
catchier.
it sounds so much cleaner. But football has a lame-ass way of saying the end of a game. But Kevin, we have the people locked and loaded with a full-scale Iowa State preview throughout the day. We're going to bring on our guy, Alec Busse.
I believe it's Busse. I've heard other interviewers introduce him as such, and he just smiled. So I think it's Busse, and I think we're going with that unless he says it's like Busse or something like that, or Busse. You know what I mean? I don't know. But little accent aigu at the end of that. You know? Accent aigu versus accent whatever. We got circumflexes. I don't know.
I wish there are times where I wish I was the producer of this show, Kevin, so I could just like toss you on mute and time out for like a good like minute, and then just like
we were talking about PTI or not PTI around the horn. Yeah.
Like throw him off screen. He doesn't deserve to be on screen after that French pronunciation of Alec Busse's name, but might be Busse. Definitely isn't whatever the hell Kevin just said. But we do have a full scale Iowa State preview to break down all day today. Going to be a lot of fun, and we're excited to talk about this game in lead up to Saturday, Kevin.
Yeah, like you said, Alec Busse coming on the pod later. No one better to preview that matchup than 24/7 Sports' Alec Busse. He had the latest on the injury report side of things as well. And we also spoke to Levi Stevenson, Iowa State X's and O's expert in a sense as well. Leading up, you're going to have to wait to see that one, though, because he had some nice insight into like the X's and O's of Iowa State's defense and how that's actually like caused, a butterfly effect moment in the Big 12. It was a very interesting interview with Levi. But today we are talking to Alec, and we also spoke with Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football. They're, more national, more broad analyst. Also, Southern Utah's play-by-play guy. A really busy dude is Spencer McLaughlin. And we spoke to him about a wide variety of things. Arizona in relation to the Big 12, Arizona in relation to maybe nationally competing one day, and overall what he thinks about Brent Brennan. So without further ado, here's our interview with Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football. We got Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football here with us today. First of all, Spencer, how you doing? I know you were just at a golf tournament, very busy man. How are we doing?
Okay. I mean, overall really well. It's great to have games to talk about every week, and that's awesome. In the tournament, it was a 4-man scramble. We came out of the gates hot. We cooled off. We picked up a little at the end. We did okay. We did okay. But a day on the golf course is always fun. Can't complain. It was 85 and sunny.
Me and Kevin are probably the worst golf podcast in America. If we were to do a little 2-man scramble with anybody, I think we would lose. So I'm sure your standard of okay is a lot different than ours.
It probably is. I was swearing at myself on our second to last hole on a ball that wound up in the fairway, so it might be a little different.
Yeah, there's certainly levels to the golf game, right? And let's get it back on college football. There's levels to college football as well, right? And Arizona last year was at one of the lower levels in terms of their performance under first-year head coach at Arizona, Brent Brennan. Now in year 2 at Arizona under Brent Brennan, they start out 3-0 for the first time in like 10 years, I believe. You go on the road against Iowa State this upcoming Saturday, a huge road test. And before we get to Iowa State, I wanted to ask you, Spencer, where do you kind of see Arizona fitting in right now nationally under year 2 of Brent Brennan?
Well, if you go outside the Big 12, I don't think they have anything yet to indicate that they're, worthy of huge discussion or attention at the moment. Now that can change because they're in the same position, frankly, that their in-state counterpart was in a season ago. Arizona State picked to finish last in the Big 12. They win the Big 12. Arizona's trying to do kind of the same thing. And look, I wasn't that high on Arizona coming into the year, and I don't feel great about that right now because I've liked what I've seen so far through the first 3 games. But the Kansas State win is a good start, even though Kansas State has really struggled to begin the season, fallen well short of expectations. I still think it's a good sign that you start 1-0 against your Big 12 opponents, and then you go forward and you now have an opportunity. You've got an opportunity this week against Iowa State. That's just a massive chance to capture at least a little bit of the national spotlight, and at least make people turn some heads and go, hey, is he figuring it out? He did a good job at San Jose State. Is he about to figure it out here in year 2 with the Wildcats? And again, the Kansas State win is solid, but it's not one that's going to garner huge headlines or anything like that. Of course, the first 2 opponents not very good, so they played very well in those games. But to this point, Iowa State is definitely the biggest opportunity they have. You go 4-0 with a win over Iowa State, you should be in the top 25. Will you be? I don't know. As we've learned this year, AP voters don't actually have a logical way of thinking about how they vote or are consistent in any way, shape, or form. Or some of them don't think it matters, which is just mind-boggling. Give me your vote if you don't want it. So I think that if Arizona is able to pull an upset in Ames this week, which I'm not anticipating, but they've been playing good football, so maybe, then I think you start to get into the national spotlight again. But for right now, I think it's more of an internal focus for the program of, hey, how do we get better? How do we move forward? Just, put last year behind us and just take a step forward. Start with getting to a bowl game or winning 7 or 8 games maybe now that they're off to a 3-0 start. I think that's where Arizona's at right now.
You mentioned that they stand a chance against Iowa State, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into that game for a second. We're an Arizona podcast. Obviously, we're a little bit higher on Arizona than the consensus usually is. I think so far this season we've been right, but this is by far the biggest test, as you mentioned. Like, how good of a chance do you think Arizona truly does stand on the road in a whiteout in Ames?
I think it's a respectable, reasonable chance. I definitely put it sub 50%. And, Vegas agrees with me on that. Iowa State's a 6.5-point favorite at home, which isn't a huge number, quite frankly, in college football. You compare that to the NFL, 6.5-point favorite doesn't lose as often outright, nearly as much in the pro ranks as they do in college. But I think that's one of the things that makes college football so much fun. And I just think that for Arizona in this spot, yeah, you have to keep playing the strong brand of football that they have through the first few weeks. Something I've been impressed with is I watch all 3 phases, and I think they're doing all 3 well at the moment. And I don't think a lot of people are going to talk about their defense and the way that they've played through the first few weeks, because who's the guy that on Arizona? Well, Noah Fifita. Some people will probably surprised that, wait, he's still there? Was it like he was a quarterback in the last year? He's still at Arizona. Yeah, he's still there, and he's still incredibly capable and has looked really good so far this year from what I've been able to see. So, I don't think that it's ridiculous to think, like, if I, am perusing box scores. I don't remember the exact kickoff time of the game on Saturday. Do you guys know?
4 p.m., I believe.
4 p.m. What time zone?
Zone. So I believe Central Time, that should be 6 p.m.
6 Central. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'll probably get to catch the first half before I've got my own play-by-play broadcast to do. But if I look at the end of the game we're calling and see that Arizona's won, I'll say, wow, that's a great win for Arizona. It won't be, oh my gosh, they won? What do you mean? How'd they win? Like, I don't think it's one of those sorts of games. I definitely do expect Iowa State, who obviously started the season really well, but has also had some moments where you're like, it's not perfect, it's not great. I do expect them to go out and win the game just because they are at home, and I did like their team coming into this year. They're my preseason number 4 team power rankings wise in the Big 12, and you knock Kansas State out of there, and they've knocked themselves out of that conversation, and Iowa State to be third. So I do like the Cyclones, and it's hard to not like Rocco Becht. It's hard to not like Matt Campbell. I love the way they use their tight ends offensively. I think it's a big key for this Arizona defense is take that away and make Rocco Becht connect with his wide receivers. I think that's something they can do, but I always feel like those tight ends are lethal in that offensive system. So I think that is where things stand for Arizona going into this game is like you've got a reasonable shot. If you go on the road here and get blown out, I think you have a right to be fairly disappointed with the way that they've been playing so far this year. But if you go on the road and lose with a game-winning field goal, after when I talk about games on my show after the fact, I do a fan vibes assessment of where you should be on a 5-point scale. There's a highest, there's good vibes, no vibes, bad vibes, and the lowest vibes. Arizona could lose this game, and I could give them a good vibes because you could say, oh, hey, we lost the game, but that's a Big 12 title contender, and we just went toe-to-toe with them on their home field. I think there is such a thing as a moral victory in this spot for Arizona.
And, you reference the idea that the Big 12, like the top of the Big 12 coming into this season, highly contentious, a lot of talented teams in this Big 12 conference, pretty much from, I'll say 1 to 11, pretty much. You have a lot of really, truly good to competitive teams in this conference.
11 might be a little bit of a stretch.
No, that's fair. That is fair. That is being a bit generous to the Big 12. But like Houston, for example, has shown that they are pretty competitive. Yep. Now, mileage may vary, on how far that goes, right? But Damon and I have been discussing, will the Big 12 kind of cannibalize itself out of multiple CFP bids? And we wanted to ask you as a more, bird's eye view of things, do you think that is where this is going, that the Big 12 will just be too tough for its own good?
Yeah, I've talked about that a number of times on my show this year, and I think it is where the Big 12 is at right now. It's not a guarantee. The problem that you have is what you mentioned, that this is a very deep league. The Big 12 is a better football league top to bottom than the ACC. The problem and the difference is that Florida State and Miami are in the top 10. And though I can readily make the case Texas Tech should be, they are not. And they're not going to suddenly be perceived that way because the rest of their schedule doesn't have a currently ranked team on it, right? So I don't think it's impossible. I just think that with what happened last year, what I can't get out of my head, which is a bad thing for the Big 12, and I'm not saying it's right, it's just reality. BYU was 10-2 last year with a road win against an at-large playoff team. And the committee didn't give them half a look to be in that spot. So what you'd need for the Big 12 is either what happened in the ACC last year, which is a 9-3 or a 10-2 beats an 11 or 12 win team, or you need 2 11 or more win teams to meet in Arlington. Basically, what they've told now, it's only 1 year of data. However, the ACC has had an abysmal non-conference slate. The Big 12's has been okay. Not a disaster. They had a really bad weekend, but they've had some solid results. Baylor knocked off SMU. Colorado losing to Georgia Tech when they turned the ball over 3 times in the first quarter. That wasn't great for the league. Arizona State losing to Mississippi State, not great. There are more examples like that immediately pop into my head as to how the league is going to be perceived. And I've talked about how important those games have been for the Big 12 throughout the course. Baylor not being able to beat Auburn, who looks like they're headed for a 6 or 7 win season at most at home. Like, these are things I think the committee and the voters are going to hold against the league, and I can't really fault them for that. So you probably need to have 2 11 or more win teams at the end of conference championship weekend. Is that mathematically possible at the moment? Yes, it is. With the depth of the league and the schedules, is it likely? Arizona State could put TCU in a tough spot this week if they win. I think they will. If TCU wins, then Arizona State's out as an at-large. It just gets really tough. Frankly, the best 10-2 at-large opportunity was Baylor because they had Auburn and SMU. And if they'd gone 2-0 in those games, wins over Baylor would be seen as more credible. And Baylor themselves would have a chance to go 10-2, but they're not able to get it done. So I think it's a real challenge. And the ACC with FSU and Miami right now is in a much better position to get 2 teams there. Nothing's given. We're only a third of the way through the regular season, but like right now, it feels like it is a seriously uphill battle because, even if Texas Tech goes, let's say 11-1 in the regular season, and they face a 10-2 TCU or Arizona State, whoever wins this Friday in the Big 12 championship game, well, to get into the playoff, you have to have Texas Tech lose. And gosh almighty, how good did they look this past weekend? So long-winded way of saying it's not impossible. Nothing's been eliminated mathematically. I just think that the first few weeks of the season didn't go the way the Big 12 would have hoped.
I know that, Florida State obviously has the big win versus Alabama and Miami has the big win versus Notre Dame. But why do you think that the ACC as a whole is valued over the Big 12? Considering the Big 12 kind of dominated the ACC in non-conference play. I believe that Georgia Tech-Colorado game, I think, is the only win that the ACC got over the Big 12, if I'm not mistaken. There might have been one more. But even like a UCF is destroying a UNC.
North Carolina stinks. Anybody listen to my show knows that that's the case. North Carolina stinks. That was never. It's not going to work. Okay, sorry.
But UCF, I don't think is all that great either, and they're putting it on North Carolina. I feel like the Big 12 is kind of, in my opinion, established itself as the third best. Maybe not from a top heavy perspective, maybe from a depth perspective. Does that ring true from a national?
That's absolutely how I see it. And I haven't spoken to every AP voter or the College Football Playoff Committee to get their thoughts on the matter. I don't know how you would argue differently at this point because of those sorts of results. And the Big 12 should get credit for all of that, which is why I put them over the ACC. The problem that they have is, the lack of top end teams, which is why, as I've talked about on my show, Texas Tech is so interesting and exciting in the short and long term. They're not just going out and in one offseason making some splash moves here. Like, they're going after, I think Ladarius Guyton is the guy's name. They got Felix Ojo to commit. Like, these are big time trench player prospects that never would have looked in the Big 12. And there have been some other recruiting wins, most notably the quarterback position, Ryder Lyons, Keyshawn Henderson coming into the league in the next couple of years. So I think that is a good sign for the Big 12. And right now, top to bottom, I'm taking the Big 12. It's just what those programs have. Preseason top 10 Alabama, preseason top 10 Notre Dame with really good wins in that spot. And the Alabama win keeps looking better. We'll see if that lasts. They have Georgia this week. I don't know that they're going to win that game, but that win keeps looking better. Notre Dame, I think, eventually will be a good but not great win necessarily. But still, where are those equivalent wins for the Big 12? Like the games you're talking about, 100% in my head justify putting the Big 12 top to bottom over the ACC. But where are the high profile wins? I haven't seen those. A win over Auburn even would have been good. Arizona State losing to Mississippi State, I think in the eyes of a lot of people in the college football world, did a lot of damage to the league. I think it did a lot of damage to the league, and I think we're going to see that continue to play out. But for me personally, there are some disappointing teams in the ACC. I think Georgia Tech is good. I was bullish on Georgia Tech in the offseason, but Clemson is a massive letdown. Louisville has not looked good to start. I thought Duke could be a decent team. They don't look very good out the gates. Like, once you get past the top 3 teams, really, which is 1, Miami, 2, Florida State, and 3, Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech might be better, honestly. But once you get past those teams, steep drop off. And in the Big 12, you don't have that drop off until you get to like team 9 or 10, I would say. So that's the difference. And it's a matter of perspective. But at the end of the day, I think the committee cares most about what you have at the top of your league and what those big time high profile wins are. And unfortunately for the Big 12, those just aren't there at the moment.
He is Spencer McLaughlin. I want to give you a chance to plug all of the great work that you do, not only for Locked On College Football, but also for Southern Utah play-by-play, I believe, as well.
Yeah. I'm the play-by-play voice for Southern Utah University. I actually have a volleyball match to call later tonight, and then football on Saturday and soccer on Sunday, all the while covering college football on Locked On College Football and Locked On Oregon Ducks Monday through, technically just Friday. We're on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. But this time of year, I legitimately couldn't tell you how many shows and appearances I've done this week in the lead up to Penn State. I lost track a while ago. I've done like 3 Oregon bonus shows, and I'll do more college football shows, reacting to the Big 12 games on Friday night. Stoked about that. I like Iowa State and Arizona State in the two biggest Big 12 games of the week, which should be fun. But yeah, I would also just like to get out here on this. I liked Houston before the year. I had them preseason power rated as a top half team in the Big 12. Houston looks good, and they also play on Friday night at Oregon State. So should be a fun week as always.
Yeah. Houston and Arizona, kind of the two shock teams, it seems like, so far, I think, in Big 12 play.
I'm only shocked by one of those teams, and I've given them their due credit. I am not shocked by Houston whatsoever. Willie Fritz is a ball coach, fellas, a ball coach.
He absolutely is, and he's going to be a problem for a long time to come when Keyshawn Henderson comes in. But, Spencer, we appreciate your time, brother, and we look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
Yeah, great to be on with you guys. By the way, I see that sticker on the front of your laptop for Thursday night. Go Seahawks.
Ooh.
Yeah, go Hawks. Go Hawks.
We are
23-21. Seahawks get it done. All right, see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
You gotta love the last second he just got to hit the buzzer beater of go Seahawks and then immediately leave the stream here, Kevin. But shout out to our guy Spencer McLaughlin for giving some of his time, his very busy time, to break down what's going on in the Big 12, what's going on in the Arizona neck of the woods. But Kevin, what did you like most from that interview?
I loved your follow-up question about the Big 12 conversation, because it is something you and I have been talking a lot about on this show. And to pick Spencer's brain about it, like someone who only consumes this college basketball thing and only loves the national college basketball discourse, right? I'm sure he loves the more micro stuff too, but that is his pod, the Locked On College Football Pod. So it was nice to be able to pick his brain and be like, is this true, what we're identifying? And him to validate that and be like, no, that's exactly what the case is with people who are in the know and paying attention to this kind of stuff. And also, it's nice to hear a national guy for once, like, understand what Arizona is actually on track to do here and not just be like, well, they were really bad this year. They're probably going to be bad again this year, or last year, I should say. And I think, like, to hear Spencer kind of talk about a little bit about what Arizona can do to move forward. I know that Harvey Manfred Jensen in the chat was saying, like, get the baby talk or baby step talk out of here, right? But that's true, right? Even if you ask, like, the coaches themselves, if they go out and I don't know, something very unplausible happens, like they go undefeated, right? Let's say that. If you ask Brent Brennan how that happened, I'm sure he would tell you it was baby steps. You had to walk before you could run. And I think that last year they weren't crawling. They might have actually been into standstill. But this year it feels like they're at least jogging a little bit. And I know that they're not ready really to compete on a national stage yet, but baby steps. Compete in the Big 12 first in one of the toughest conferences in America, maybe the deepest conference in America. And yeah, it was just good to spend some time with Spencer during one of the more busy times of his season, especially because he covers the Oregon Ducks as well, and they're a hell of a program.
And Southern Utah.
Yeah, what a mix. What a crazy, wild mix.
What a grinder.
Yeah, speaking of grinders, Alec Busse coming on the pod here in a matter of minutes, and Damon and I are going to get to that interview on the other half of this break, as in addition to some more Arizona-Iowa State breakdown on the other side of this break here on the AZ Wildcats podcast. And it is ad time, and I want to talk to you all about our friends over at Pure Edibles. Now, Pure Edibles, they are the greatest edibles you will find in, dare I say, the world.
Definitely the greatest state on earth. Though.
Definitely the freedom state of Arizona. Pure Edibles, you can find them here in over 125, I'll say, because it's 130 dispensaries in the freedom state here of Arizona. It started, though, at Pure Edibles, home of Noble Herb Dispensary out there in Flagstaff, Arizona. And if you're wondering, like, yeah, we hear a lot about these full-fledged candy company edibles and how, you have your chews, you have your hard candies, you have your caramels, all that stuff. What's new, Kevin? What's new with Pure Edibles? And I tell you that their Noble Road's new Tower Station IPA all-in-one is happy hour all the time. I mentioned it on the show. I have product tested one of these myself, and they are the truth. It does give you the sensation of the all-in-one THC pen that you are looking for, but you get the taste of your IPA hops and your favorite parts of those, heavier beers. And if you're in Arizona, please swing by your local dispensary and grab your Tower Station all-in-one from Noble Road. Cheers to happy hour all the time, every day. Go find yourself some Pure Edibles products from one of the over 130 dispensaries that dispense them.
Please do so, and also please go check out our friends over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit any of our 4 locations, whether it's Wild Horse Pass, Lone Butte, V Kiva, or Santan Mountain. There's something for everyone in the valley to experience in all different portions of the valley, right, Kevin? I mean, you just made your big move out to the West Valley, and now V Kiva is just staring you right in the eyes every time that you make your drive home.
Every time.
Still haven't made your way out there yet, but we are eagerly awaiting your review of that beautiful Gila River Resort and Casino location. I'm a Wild Horse Pass man. Of course, that's where we host all of our PHNX Cardinals away game watch parties up there at the Upper Deck Kitchen and Bar. Make sure to check out our events tab on our website to go see if the availability on those, where they have great food and drinks, of course, the largest sports book in the state of Arizona, as well as a great concert venue, pool area with cabanas. You name it, man. They have it at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Go big and go home a winner, from upscale to approachable, casual to classy, from bar to bar none. Our selection of dining options are always in good taste. They have it all at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. You do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more details.
And you know, Damon, before we get to our guy, Alec Busse, I wanted to ask you what your biggest takeaway from the Spencer McLaughlin interview was. Because I know, like, it's not often you get to talk to a guy that is covering the sport that broadly and has that much intimate knowledge of what's going on in each conference. So what was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was anything necessarily super groundbreaking, but I do think that the conversation regarding the Big 12 versus the ACC is very interesting, just in terms of, yeah, everyone seems to agree the Big 12 is a significantly better conference, but for some reason it's the ACC that is consistently getting those almost like I for lack of a better term, upper echelon teams, because I don't necessarily think that those teams are all that special, to be honest, but they're treated as such. And I understand that they have those like big time, kind of season defining wins that maybe a Big 12 team doesn't have, although I would argue what Texas Tech did is pretty season defining in terms of going into Utah, losing your quarterback and still winning by multiple possessions. But I think that conversation is what stuck out to me the most. Like, what is the Big 12 going to have to do to get multiple bids in any year? I'm not just talking about this year. If seemingly like it just doesn't even matter what the ACC does, the conference can be a joke from teams 4 through how many teams do they even have? 16, and it doesn't matter. The top 2-3 teams are always going to be considered prime contenders to make the playoff.
Yeah, and we
like
do
teams
talk
like
about
SMU.
It. Yeah, like teams like SMU, that when a Big 12 school goes into SMU and beats them, it's like a massive victory. But in the grand scheme of things, like that ACC conference is not what it is maybe made up to be. But Iowa State might be everything that they're made up to be. And we have Alec Busse joining us now. Alec, how are we doing today?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Should be a fun game this weekend, and excited to preview it with you guys.
Yeah, now you've obviously been doing a lot of great work over 24/7 Sports covering Iowa State football this season. And one thing that is a first this time around for Arizona versus Iowa State is the first injury report of the season. And I think we'd be remiss to not start there. There are a couple, players missing from the injury report on Arizona's side. That's a good thing. Trey Smith, Riley Wilson, both missing from the injury report. Good for Arizona fans. But Tamatoa McDonough, I saw you were talking about him on Twitter and on your article this morning. Can you kind of walk us through Iowa State's injury report and what are some early notes that you're taking away from that?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, at least at this point from Iowa State's side of things, is probably that edge rusher, Tamatoa McDonough. He's been one of Iowa State's top 2 most impactful edge rushers this season, along with Akena Ezeagu. At the end of the Cyhawk rivalry game against Iowa, McDonough had 2 sacks, I think, on Iowa's last possession of the game. And for a team that doesn't have a lot of design defensive principles of generating a pass rush, that's where McDonough's value can kind of really come through for the Cyclones. On the interior of the defensive line is arguably Iowa State's best player overall in Dominique Orange. He's a really good run stuffer. He does have some pass rush value for Iowa State, but much of their defensive pressure is supposed to come from the edge, at least up front. And that's where McDonough provides most of his value. So not having him available is significant, but a lot of guys listed as probable for Saturday's game, including a couple of linebackers, and John Klosterman and Carson Willick. Iowa State also expecting leading receiver, tight end, Gabe Burkle to return on Saturday against Arizona. And then in the special teams game, Aiden Flora, who had 2 really long punt returns against South Dakota and a 55-7 home win for the Cyclones, is also expected to return for Iowa State on Saturday. So mostly positive there. Will certainly be worth continuing to monitor the injury report or availability report throughout the rest of the week, as Iowa State could have some other things pop up after some medical testing, according to a couple of sources that I have spoken with.
There were some rumors earlier in the week about Jeremiah Cooper, who, of course, has some connections to the Arizona program. His brother, Tristan Cooper, played for the Wildcats for, I believe, his entire tenure, I think 5 seasons at the University of Arizona. Jeremiah Cooper, one of the better players on Iowa State. Is there any legs to those rumors, and what his injury status ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, the one I was referring to a little bit there with a couple sources talking to me about medical testing, it was in relation to Jeremiah Cooper. I don't want to speculate too much there just because obviously injury stuff can be pretty touch and go. But at this point right now, I think that's something that's continuing, or that's something that's worth continuing to monitor throughout the rest of the week as the injury reports come out Thursday night here at 9 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock your guys' time, and then obviously Friday, and then 90 minutes before kickoff on Saturday, which should be around 4:30 local time here in the Ames area.
For our Arizona fans who are not as familiar with Iowa State's squad, how big of a loss would a guy like Jeremiah Cooper be if he potentially wasn't unable to go?
Yeah, it'd be pretty significant for Iowa State. He's a multi-year starter in the Cyclone secondary. The first 3 years of his career, he started for Iowa State at the free safety position. This year, he moved to corner. Part of that move was motivated by Iowa State maybe feeling like they had a lack of depth at corner opposite Jontez Williams, who really kind of turned into a star for them late last season, led the team in interceptions, had 4 picks and one pick in 4 consecutive games a year ago. Williams did. And they felt like they had a lot of depth at safety. So that allowed Iowa State to move Cooper to corner. Throughout the first 4 games of the season, it's mostly been a positive for Iowa State, which is obviously a good thing. But, you don't have a lot of depth at corner right now on this roster, like I said. And I think losing Cooper would set up an opportunity for Williams to have to play a larger role in the secondary, but it also would probably have the biggest impact on FCS transfer Trey Bell, who started to see a bigger role at corner as the season has progressed along. So if Cooper is out, I would expect Bell to get the start for Iowa State at one of the cornerback positions, as well as Jontez Williams, who has been a starter since the beginning of last season at corner.
And then also, I saw as a part of your article, defending Noah Fifita, right?
Yeah.
How do you see that going for Iowa State this coming Saturday? And what were some of your takeaways as you preview this matchup in terms of, because we were talking to some other Iowa State people as well about the dual threat ability that Noah Fifita now presents, which is a new wrinkle in his game. So how do you think Iowa State defends Noah Fifita this weekend?
Yeah, I think one thing that I really took away from Matt Campbell's press availability on Tuesday was the amount of respect he has for the talents Noah Fifita possesses. I think entering last season, a lot of people expected Fifita to be one of the best passers in the Big 12, and a myriad of circumstances seemed to kind of feed into those expectations not being met a year ago. But now a year later, he's had a much stronger start to the year, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's averaging a career high in yards per attempt. And like you mentioned there, he's starting to show a little bit more athleticism with his legs. He certainly doesn't run around like Lamar Jackson or that type of quarterback. And I think even to a degree, he's an average at best runner, but he showed some timely ability to understand when plays were breaking down, when to get going forward, when to dive for the chains, for example, against K-State in that non-conference win for Arizona. I think that those are things that really stuck out to Iowa State on tape, and that's one of the reasons why Matt Campbell and the rest of his coaching staff are really aware of and really praising Noah Fifita for his ability as an athlete to extend plays and make plays with his legs.
Seems like Iowa State has almost revolutionized defense in this conference to an extent. Kind of what makes this defense so tough to beat?
Yeah, it's a really unique defense. John Haycock, defensive coordinator, he's kind of the brainchild of the 3-3-5 stack defense. You guys as Arizona writers, podcasters, whatever, viewers, you guys have probably started to see this defense talked about a lot more in the Big 12 as you guys are carving the conference more closely in your second year here now. But it's a defensive scheme that has kind of taken over the league in various principles and formats. The idea of it is to essentially not get beat over the top. And you always have 5 defensive backs on the field in this defense, and it's a lot of zone coverage. It's designed to kind of prevent some of those explosive plays that the Big 12 became so known for about a decade ago when Matt Campbell was hired at Iowa State in 2016. It's a defense that's worked really well for the Cyclones. I think dating back to 2018, Iowa State is ranked in the top 5 in numerous defensive statistics in the Big 12, and it's because they play it at its core, and it complicates looks for opposing quarterbacks. I think anytime you're able to do that for college quarterbacks, that's an advantage because they don't have the breadth and depth of knowledge that an NFL quarterback is going to have when they see the defense pre-snap and identify the coverages. And that's something that I know Iowa State defensive coordinator John Haycock really prides himself on doing, is disguising and confusing coverages when showing those pre-snap to opposing quarterbacks. So I think that's where Iowa State really kind of takes advantage of inexperienced quarterbacks against this defensive scheme, but at the same time, trying to do it even against quarterbacks who have experience against this scheme.
Is it safe to say then that establishing ground game against Iowa State's defense is almost a must if you want to take down the Cyclones?
Yeah, but that's something that you would say against any defense. I think one thing that makes Iowa State's defense unique is their star position, which is often used throughout college football, essentially just a nickel corner or a nickel safety. It's that fifth defensive back on the field. His name's Marcus Neal Jr. He's a true sophomore for Iowa State. That guy's going to play a lot in the box, and his goal is to essentially just be a ball stuffer, I guess you can kind of say, on runs as well as on screen passes to the outside. And Neal has been one of Iowa State's 2 or 3 best defensive players to start this season. He's a former 4-star prospect from the Kansas City area. He avoided a red shirt a season ago as a freshman, and he's been praised by Iowa State's coaching staff really for the last 2 years, and it's really starting to translate to the field now. And he's done a really good job of defending both the run and the pass for Iowa State, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, Dominique Orange on the interior of the defensive line. He's done such a good job for Iowa State stopping the run. He's a great run stuffer. He probably is going to end up being a top 50 NFL draft pick this coming April, potential first-round pick. He certainly looks like an all Big 12 talent on the interior of the defensive line, along with some of those star nose tackles like Lee Hunter at Texas Tech or Dante Corleone, the Godfather at Cincinnati.
And then obviously, when we're talking about establishing the run game against a team like Iowa State, defensively, in terms of the Cyclones unit, what are some weaknesses that you think you've identified through the first 4 games of the season? Obviously 4 victories, but there's still, what have you identified weakness-wise for the Iowa State defense?
Yeah, to me, the first place I go to is probably tackling, especially coming off of the performance that they had at Arkansas State in week 3 of the season. I thought that they really struggled there. Maybe didn't take the greatest angles to the football. I think PFF credited them with 15 total missed tackles against the Red Wolves. It's a game that Iowa State's defense struggled to get off the field. They lost a time of possession battle against Arkansas State on the road there in week 3. Iowa State also had, I think, 13 missed tackles in the home win against South Dakota. I do think some of that can be attributed to the Cyclones playing a lot of young guys, a lot of players who traditionally wouldn't get a lot of snaps in a game like we should see on Saturday, which you expect to be more competitive than a 55-7 final, right? Like they're playing a lot of freshmen. They're playing a lot of redshirt freshmen who maybe don't have a lot of experience on the field. But that's still, you kind of look at it. That's 28 missed tackles across 2 games. Obviously, the Cyhawk game is spaced in between those 2 contests. But I do think that's something that's significant. I think Iowa State needs more effective play, particularly from the linebacker position. I think getting Carson Willick back could help Iowa State, but I would still expect the Cyclones to primarily play Caleb Bacon. He's one of their premier pass rushers at the linebacker position. Cale Brazina, another true sophomore that plays for Iowa State, has been a reliable tackler. But Iowa State needs more from senior Cooper Ebel as a tackler, in my opinion. He had a really tough game at Arkansas State. His tackling grades from PFF throughout the season are really not where I think the Cyclone staff would like them to be at. And then the depth at that position, they were really bullish on it entering the season because they had to play so many guys a year ago due to, I think, 45 starts roughly being missed because of injury. But the depth maybe hasn't shined through the way that they hoped it would early in the year. They really kind of have settled on a top 3 at that linebacker position, and it includes, like I said, Caleb Bacon, Carson Willich will maybe rotate in there a little bit more, but I would expect it to be more of Bacon, Brazina, and Ebel, and you'll see Will McLaughlin cycle in there a little bit. You'll see Bo Goodwin get in there a little bit, and potentially Carson Willich as well.
I want to take this from, the defensive side of the football and kind of talk about the third phase of the game, which is special teams, because Iowa State is probably going to have both their top 2 place kickers out on Saturday. I know Arizona in our last matchup, Arizona fans definitely probably left that game feeling a lot worse about our kicking situation. Michael Salgado Medina, our punter and our kicker, had some mistakes on both sides. So I think it was perceived like, hey, this could be a huge advantage from Iowa State's perspective because a guy like Kyle Conrarity, did I say that correctly? Conrarity. I mean, he's an unbelievable college kicker, right? So that could be a huge, difference in this game. But if he's going to be out, what's that situation from a kicking standpoint looking like for Iowa State with their third kicker in the lineup?
Yeah, so they are going to be without Kyle Conrarity and Jace Gilbert. Both of them are not going to play for the Cyclones on Saturday. That means a true freshman, Chase Smith, will kick for the Cyclones here this weekend. Smith did get an opportunity for Iowa State against Arkansas State. He also kicked for the Cyclones against South Dakota, I believe it was. He had a PAT go through against Arkansas State on the road after Conrarity was removed from the game after missing both a field goal and a PAT, and then he went into the injury tent, and that's when Smith started to get his first real opportunity for Iowa State. He's also going to handle kickoffs for the Cyclones on Saturday, which I find interesting because they don't really know who else on the roster I think is capable of handling kicking duties. Right now, Matt Campbell was asked on Tuesday who his backup kicker would be, and he responded to that reporter and said, can you kick? Do you have any eligibility? Now, is that Campbell being a little facetious and coach speaking and not wanting to give away who his backup kicker is? Perhaps. He's kind of known for that kind of stuff, of not wanting to give away too much information, but it's a backup kicker, right? Like those guys generally, well, in this case, your fourth string kicker, I guess. Those guys tend to not have too big of an impact on the game, but we'll have to see if Iowa State gets into that position of having to use a different kicker than Smith. From a kickoff perspective, I do think his play could change the game a little bit for Iowa State. Opponents are averaging about 17 and a half yards per kick return against him. I don't know what level Brett Brennan's aggressiveness is at as a kick returning type of team. Obviously, a lot of college coaches are like, hey, we'll take the fair catch. We'll take the ball to 25. Seems like a good compromise for the both of us. I'll be interested to see how aggressive Arizona wants to be in the special teams kick return game. And I also think that not having Conrarity is something that's going to stress and challenge Iowa State as well. You mentioned him being a game changer for Iowa State. He set a program record with a 63-yard field goal back against South Dakota State. He has a game winner against Iowa in week 2 of the season. That was a 54-yarder. It's the second straight year that he's had a 54-yard game-winning kick against Iowa. Losing that guy is significant. That changes the way you operate, particularly at the end of half, end of game. When you approach midfield, you get into your opponent's territory. And even throughout the game, I mean, offensive coordinator Taylor Mauser said this week, it was like, when we get across the 50, it can change the way we operate when we have Kyle Conrarity, because we know that he can make kicks from 60 to 65 yards. So that's obviously not a luxury that Iowa State's going to have this weekend. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Iowa State get more aggressive offensively. If it's a 4th and 3 at the Arizona 47, instead of kicking a field goal with Conrarity, they might decide to roll the dice and go for it.
And then, I was thinking to myself, Damon, like, how great would a Tyler Loop versus Kyle Conrarity matchup? How great would that have been if Tyler Loop was able to stick around one more year for Arizona? Because, I when I listen to you talk and wax poetic about all that Conrarty's been able to do for the Cyclones, I can't help but think about our former kicker, Tyler Loop, who's now the Ravens starting kicker in the NFL, and the pardon me, the reliability that a kicker can provide not only a team on the field, but also the fan base off the field, right? Because now watching Michael Salgado Medina, a.k.a. Funky Cole Medina, as some people in our chat call him, he's not a bad kicker, right? But he's certainly not a kicker that you can, really rely on. And I guess that might make him a bad kicker. Maybe I'm being too kind.
I feel like we haven't seen enough to really put a label on him yet. He might be a bad kicker, but I agree with you, Kevin. I think as I was hearing Alec talk, I was definitely thinking to myself, like, it just changes the psyche that a coach has when deciding, like you say, like on a 4th and short later in the game, are you going to go for a 55-yard field goal, or are you going to go for it, which could end up being, now all of a sudden you're putting your opponent, if you don't get it, 15 yards away from field goal range, for example. So It's definitely something to monitor going into this game. But one of those, kind of deciding factors in these games for Iowa State has been the quarterback, Rocco Becht, who has been so clutch, so pivotal in every big moment. What is it about Rocco Becht that just makes it seem like he shows up every time that his number gets called?
Yeah, I think it's hard to describe, right? I think we've all seen quarterbacks who step up in the fourth quarter, and that's when they play their best in tight one-score games. We don't always have the ability to quantify why it is they play their best in those moments, but I certainly think Rocco Becht is one of those passers that does that. I think this year in one-score games, he's completing like 72% of his passes on possessions that end in the fourth quarter with over 260 passing yards. That's remarkable. Dating back to I think the beginning of last season, Iowa State is 8-1 or 9-1 in one-score games. A lot of that is due to their quarterback. He's been a game changer for them in those moments. He doesn't err. He doesn't make mistakes. He has the ability to just like feel the moment, seize the moment, and make the big throw. And I think you can even see that in their road game at Arkansas State back in week 3. Arkansas State scores a touchdown in the fourth quarter, makes it 17-16, and suddenly there's a ton of game pressure really mounting on Iowa State. They weren't able to pull away throughout the first 3.5 quarters of that game, and now they're only up 1, and they don't have their star kicker. The defense can't really get off the field. They've struggled to stop the run throughout the game, and it's on the offense to kind of go score and seize momentum. And I think first or second play of that possession, Rocco Becht hits transfer receiver Xavier Townsend for a 44-yard bomb down the sideline. A couple plays later, Busama runs in for a 4-yard touchdown. And it's like, damn, like there goes any hope that Arkansas State had, because now Iowa State's up 8 points and there's 7 minutes left in the game. Like that at that point, it takes a pretty miraculous comeback for a team to win, because you need 2 scores in 8 minutes to win in regulation. You look at the Iowa game. He gets the Cyclones into field goal range with roughly a minute and a half left, and Conradi kicks a field goal, game's over. The K-State game, Iowa State doesn't necessarily need a game-winning drive in that game, similar to the Arkansas State game, but defense makes a really big play to get a stop on fourth down. Jamison Patton blows up Avery Johnson. It's 4th and 3. Iowa State could kick a field goal to increase their lead. Matt Campbell decides to put the ball in the hands of his trusted quarterback, who's earned that right. He hits Carson Hansen for a check down design screen pass, and it's a first down that gets down to the inch line. Game's over. Iowa State kneels it out. Like Rocco Becht's ability in the big moment to seize the moment, to be calm, to be confident, to rally his teammates are, in my opinion, his best traits. He doesn't have the elite physical talent. He's not someone who's going to rifle a 5-yard out route into the smallest window in the world. He's accurate. He can throw the ball downfield. He has arm strength, but he's not, gifted like Lenora Sellers would be. Like, I don't think that Rocco Becht necessarily has the type of arm talent, the physical traits to be a first-round NFL draft pick, but damn it, that kid wins football games. And I don't really like the QB win stat, but he kind of makes it matter a little bit more, because since he's taken over the program, Matt Campbell's really re-grasped control of the program. They win 7 games in 2023, his first year as starter. They set a program record with 11 wins in 2024. They're off to a 4-0 start this year, and I think so much of that is obviously due to Rocco Becht, but certainly the players around him. But Becht is the face of the program right now, and he's earned a lot of that with his success in the big moments.
How do you fluster a guy like that?
I don't know. At this point, I don't know, because he hasn't made a mistake in those moments. To me, really since the week 2 loss to Iowa back in 2023, Iowa State, I think, was down 8 in that game. They get the ball with the chance to tie it, and he throws a late interception that I think may have ended up being a pick 6. And I can't remember him struggling in a tight game like that since that moment. And that's just wild, because that was his first really one-score tight game that he was in. And they lost to Ohio on the road the next week, and he had a pick in that game. It wasn't necessarily his fault at the end of the fourth quarter. I believe the ball was deflected, if I remember correctly, but they struggled more offensively in the first 3.5, 4 quarters of that game than they did late in that contest. But really since those moments, he's been nails for Iowa State in the big moments. And if they lose in tight games, it's generally not his fault. You want to fluster a guy like that in those moments. You got to kind of confuse him, but he's a third-year starter. Like, he knows coverages. He sees defenses and he dials it up and he executes it. And he's been well coached. His dad, Anthony Becht, is obviously a former NFL tight end. His dad calls games for the New York Jets radio team. His dad coaches for the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL, or whatever the name of that league is called. Kakak, that's a St. Louis native.
St. Louis native on
yes.
what part?
I don't
what high
watch
school?
The Battlehawks. I'm actually from O'Fallon, Illinois. Is that where you're from? Are you from?
Yeah, I'm from St. Louis. Yeah.
Where are you from? What high school did you go to?
Parkway Central.
Attaboy, I've heard of it. I'm from O'Fallon, Illinois. That's wild.
Drink people at home. St. Louis mentioned.
Ding, count it. Go Cardinals. Yeah,
Cardinals.
for sure.
I should be careful saying go Cardinals with the Arizona Cardinals. I got to make sure I dignify the right Cardinals. But yeah, I hope the Cardinals get a win tonight. I picked them on my radio show this morning. But yeah, I think that you got to try and confuse a quarterback like that. And you got to speed him up. You got to pressure him. But he just handles it all really, really well.
Yeah, and Damon and I do quarterback power rankings bi-weekly here on the show, and like when we talk about Rocco Becht, like we call him a game manager, but it's like a compliment, right? Because I think a lot of times when you look at quarterbacks, like if someone tried to call Avery Johnson a game manager, it would be them trying to say that his legs don't work anymore, and he certainly can't throw the ball. So how else is he going to win the game except for manage it? But Rocco Becht seems to be on the other side of that coin, where like the game managerial skills are what makes him different from the rest of his counterparts, right? Like you have a guy like Sawyer Robertson who has all the talent in the world, right? But he doesn't necessarily, he's not as nails when like the chips are down as Rocco Becht is. So to your point, like he might not have all the quarterback talent in the world, but he does have all like the stuff between the ears that seem to matter for a quarterback. Similar in a different way is Noah Fifita, where like he doesn't have the height that like an elite, A1 quarterback would usually ordinarily have, or the size or the frame, but he does have the ability to throw the ball with the best of them. He does have the ability to run a little bit. When you look at Noah Fifita and what he's offered, I know we kind of talked about his legs. How do you view this quarterback matchup? Because I think coming into the season, people have viewed Rocco Becht as, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Like you alluded to, people would have said that about Noah Fifita a couple years ago, but the context and the results really didn't match up with that. And now people are kind of viewing him on a little bit more of a cynical view. So how do you kind of view this matchup between the two QBs? And what can the result of this game be for each of them, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting quarterback matchup just because, I just talk so highly and glowingly about Rocco Becht, but I think if you think back to the way that Arizona played in that K-State game, Fifita helped close it out in the fourth quarter for him. And frankly, if it wasn't for penalties by his offensive line in the first three quarters, it's probably not a one-score game late. They technically had, in some views, you could say they had 2 touchdowns taken off the board, or an opportunity to score 2 touchdowns taken off the board because of penalties by the offensive line. I think that Fifita is someone who is kind of an interesting evaluation, right? Like I certainly think they would like his completion percentage to increase, but he's throwing the ball downfield. And I find it really interesting that he's doing that now without Tataroa and McMillan. He's doing that within a new offensive scheme with a new coordinator. I find that to be unique, that he seems to be playing with a lot more confidence in this scheme compared to what he was in a year ago with some personnel that was a little bit more customary to his past success at Arizona. I think that you have to give a little bit of an edge to Becht just because we've seen him do it now for the better part of 2 full seasons, and now entering his 3rd season, and get better throughout that process. I think the way you really kind of described it is Becht. I think you described it really well. Where like Becht just seems to have an ability to win football games, and like I don't like the QB win stat because it's a team sport, and like it takes all 11 guys on an offense to execute for a play to work. Same on defense. And I don't think a win should be credited to just one position or one player, but it's hard to not do it when it happens over and over and over again with one player playing really clutch ball at the most important position in tight games. I think Becht's reliability in those moments is one of the reasons why I have confidence that Iowa State does win on Saturday night, because 1, they've been really good at home in the last couple of years. 2, he's been awesome in one-score games, and I expect this to be a closer game for at least the better part of 3 quarters. And 3, it's a really tough environment for Noah Fifita to step into. It's going to be a sold-out crowd for the 3rd time this season. It's going to be a whiteout. Baylor knows all about how challenging that is to step into because they came to Iowa State a year ago and lost in pretty big fashion inside Jack Trice Stadium in this environment, in this scene. I like Fifita. I'm not necessarily out on Fifita. Like, I'm cautiously buying Fifita stock again, I guess. Like, I was buying, like, I had a lot of Fifita stock before the 2024 season, and I kind of held a lot of my Arizona stock entering the 2024 season despite Jedd Fisch departing for Washington. And then it just kind of was like a train wreck. And I was like, well, dang, I feel like an idiot for holding on to this. But now Fifita's been pretty good to start the year, and it's getting me excited that it was just an odd transitional season for him. And I think that Arizona's a team, especially if they win on Saturday night in Ames, is a team that a lot of people are going to circle amongst Big 12 media spaces like this as a potential riser throughout the rest of the season. And I think a lot of that would be due to Fifita.
We'll get you out of here on this. What is your official prediction, if you do predictions for this?
I do. No, I do them. I don't know if you guys have seen, I know I gave it to Jason Shearer of the Wildcat, the Arizona 24/7 website earlier this week. I do have Iowa State winning. I do think it'll be a closer game than some people. I was actually texting with a couple of Big 12 friends who are like, I think Iowa State boat races Arizona. I was like, yeah, I don't see that happening. I guess it could. I don't think it will. I think Iowa State wins. I have them winning 28-20 on Saturday night. I think Becht makes a few clutch plays in the 4th quarter that kind of swing things towards Iowa State. Ultimately, or the defense makes a big play here or there. It's a tough environment for Arizona to come into and win. I do think it'll be a fun environment for Arizona fans if they're traveling or viewing the game on TV. Not that you guys aren't accustomed to those, right? But I do think it'll be a good opportunity for fans to really kind of see one of the new Big 12 environments, either up close in person or on TV. And it should be a good one.
You know, we appreciate you for taking some time out of your busy game week to help us preview this matchup, Alec. And also another Missourian. I don't know what the proper.
Seems like you should know that.
I'm a St. Louisan. I'm not a Missourian.
Yes, you
Missourian. I'm a St. Louisan. It's a very different thing. We can talk about this after the show. But Alec, we appreciate you for popping on with us. Please plug all the great work you do. Where can the people in the chat find more of your stuff?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Alec_Busse. You can read all of my work at Cyclone Alert or the Iowa State 24/7 Sports website. Google either one of those things. It should come up for you pretty quickly. You can also hear me on KXNO's 106.3 FM in Des Moines, Iowa Sports Radio Network, the first quarter. I'm on there Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We'll spend a lot of time previewing Saturday's game here tomorrow morning. I'm excited to do that. Jason Shearer will join us for about 15-20 minutes roughly, so people can hear the Arizona side of things from him as well. So it should be a really good game, one I'm looking forward to, especially as now Big 12 play begins in earnest for these two schools.
Thanks, Alec. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it, and big fan of the ALLCITY content, so keep it up, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you so
means
much.
A lot, brother. Definitely. We love 24/7 sports over here as well. Make sure that you guys go follow Alec Busse over at, what is it, Alec_Busse?
I believe so. I probably should have had that off top of my little
Yeah,
page.
I got it right. Alec_Busse, Busse. Kevin, let's get into our final ad break on the AZ Wildcats pod, and then we'll recap that latest interview.
One thing I want to recap with you is, what was that? Oh, it was incredible products that might involve THC with our friends over at Zen Leaf Dispensary. And now, Damon, you and we have acquired some tote bags recently from Zen Leaf. And first of all, the tote bag itself is absolutely gorgeous, right? Zen Leaf has style at the bare minimum. And above the bare minimum, they got some great flower products for you as well. So Phoenix, whether you're gearing up for game day, winding down after a hike up a mountain, I will say, or just trying to recover from another brutal Diamondbacks loss. Sorry, Damon. Do it with Zen Leaf Dispensaries. That's how I know Damon gets down. After every D-backs loss, he's just like, you know what? I gotta relax. And check this out. For a limited time, using promo code ZEN, PHNX, ZEN, PHNX, for 50% off That's right, half off just for listening to this pod. You can only use it once, so make sure to stock up with this amazing discount. Whether you've been around the block or you're trying to try something for the first time, Zenleaf and their crew will help you make sure that you leave with exactly what fits your needs. And don't forget, for a limited time, using that promo code of ZEN, PHNX, ZEN, PHNX, you get 50% off of a one-time purchase. Zenleaf, great weed, great service, every time. I was going to say every damn time. I guess I just did. But every time with Zenleaf. Like I said, those totes, Damon, chef's kiss.
Yeah, great stuff from our friends over at Zenleaf, who dropped off beautiful care packages for our family over here at PHNX Sports. But I got to tell you guys about, I consider them family, the Game Time app, gametime.co, or download the free app today. It's the only place to buy football tickets during the new football season, because we got a promo code for you. It's PHNX. It's going to get you $20 off your first purchase on Game Time. Kevin, there's so many great things about the Game Time app. There's the all-in pricing tool that shows you exactly what those fees are going to look like while you're making your purchase, so you don't end up in your cart with $40 extra that you didn't expect to pay for.
That is the worst.
That is the worst. They also show you exactly what your seat is going to look like from the exact place that you are buying your tickets, so you know what to expect when you're going into the stadium. And they have their Game Time Picks feature, which tells you, Kevin, what is the best seat for the best price in the stadium. They use their algorithm to compare and contrast, and then they tell you, this is the best deal, take this one. Game Time has all these great features that have revolutionized the ticketing business, and it is the only ticketing app that I use personally. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code PHNX for $20 off. Tap ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Kevin, what time is it?
Game time. I hope the sun.
The moment everybody is waiting for every time Kevin starts barking like a lunatic.
Yeah, because it's game time. And I bark for good prices. And not only that, Damon, Suns, I mentioned the podcast, starting here soon after our pod goes off the air. If you're an NBA guy or girl, check out our Suns pod. But, Damon, I hope they heard that, because everyone has to know it's game time at all times here on the AZ Wildcats podcast. We had Spencer McLaughlin on today. We had Alec Busse on today, and we also spoke with Levi Stevenson, which you guys will see very soon as a part of our Iowa State preview. I'm locked and loaded for this Saturday. I am ready for Arizona versus Iowa State. I think, and I think we should probably just wrap up the show kind of with our takeaways from what we learned about talking Iowa State today with some people. I feel like what I've learned is that I can be bullish on Arizona going into this matchup. I can be confident that they're going to make a good account for themselves, but catch me for the predictions, because I'm not so sure that I'm going to outright say that Arizona goes out and gets it done. That is not saying that I don't think less of Arizona, right? I think the world of what Brent Brennan's been able to do with this team so far this season. But Iowa State, that is a real challenge, and no fault if they are not able to overcome the challenge that is Iowa State on the road. But it should be a great game, is what I've learned from talking to some Iowa State people. If Arizona plays up to the challenge, this will be a great one to watch on Saturday.
I almost feel like Iowa State's style isn't conducive to blowing out a decent team. You know what I mean? So it's like if Arizona is truly a decent team to a good team, I think it's still very much up in the air. What is Arizona's ceiling this season? And Saturday will tell us a lot. But I think a decent to good team doesn't get blown out against Iowa State, even though it's on the road, even though they're the number 14 team in the country. I just personally don't think that that's something that should happen if you're a good team. So I think with that being said, I would be shocked if it was a blowout. I expect a good game, but I'm kind of with you. I think, it's a little bit pushing it to say Arizona's going to go into a whiteout game in Ames against a team that is so established, a coach that's been there for 10 seasons, a quarterback who's in his third year starting, who just all he seemingly does is win football games. It seems like maybe it's just a little bit too much stacked up against Arizona. Again, we're going to give our official predictions on our pregame show, right? Not even on our Friday show.
Yeah, pregame.
But yeah, I think, I definitely feel that this should be a competitive football game from start to finish.
And additionally, Damon, I will say this, right? Brent Brennan was able to go on the road in Utah and get a W in adverse circumstances. Now, this is not that. This is not that. Red alert. This is not that. But I will say that, I think that Brent Brennan has shown an ability at times to like go on the road, meet a challenge, have his team play and show a good account for themselves. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with the Utah example. And I think if Arizona can go out and get the W on Saturday, as Spencer McLaughlin alluded to, now Damon and I get to come on this show on Monday and say, rank the Cats. Rank the damn Cats. And I might sound crazy.
They won't. Like our guy Spencer said on the, which I've been saying, like, if you win this game, you're ranked. I also said if ASU goes into Baylor and beats them in Waco, that they would be ranked. I think to my misunderstanding was that the Big 12 is the new Pac-12 in that the teams will cannibalize each other and thus get consistently underrated in the polls.
Yes, and like I was saying, like this is a huge statement if Arizona is able to go out. And not only that, I think it really cements that this year there is no like, oh, well, they haven't played anybody yet. And if they do go out and beat Iowa State, what I really don't want to hear, barring some sort of catastrophic, weird, cosmic interference, is I don't want to hear that Iowa State's not good if Arizona goes out there and beats them. Because I was talking to Eric Ruby today about this of the ASU pod. Boo. You know what I mean? But I was saying, like, he was kind of saying, what if you guys go in there and get ran out the building? And I go, you know what, Eric? Like, it's a possibility. Like, they could do it. Arizona, their defense could be fraudulent. It could, this thing could all just blow up in our face. But, like, what I was trying to tell him is that if Arizona had lost to K-State, people are like, oh, K-State, they're starting to bounce back. You know what I mean? But since Arizona beat K-State, now it's, well, they're never going to get the ship right again. Should they just fire Chris Kleiman? Because they just lost to Arizona. And we know they're the worst. And it's just like, I don't want to hear that. If Arizona goes and beats Iowa State, that all of a sudden Iowa State's not what we think that they are, which is a top 3 team in this conference. Right? So, like, I personally, I'm saying it going in.
That is what you would hear.
It is. That's why I'm getting out ahead of it now.
Hawaii's pretty good. Hawaii sucks.
Yes.
Kansas State might be coming
They're
back.
They're super
here.
talented, but they're not playing well.
Get right game. Kansas State's, though, 16th best team in the Big 12.
Yeah, and it's just like I with K-State, to an extent, I understand it because the results have been so far below expectation. But I still think you have to look at that roster and remember why you had them preseason where you did. The talent level on that roster is still real. So, yeah, I think that W, as Travis says here, W or loss, right? I'll steal that. Arizona, if they make a good account for themselves, validates all the changes that they've made in the offseason. And if they win the whole damn game on Saturday, Lord help us. Because Damon and I might just be on this show insufferable on Monday, begging to get ranked, knowing it's insanity. And as Travis Helm here says in the chat, thanks for being a great podcast to vibe with. Unlike Utah and UCF fans, I think most clones agree with me. Funny, I guess we can end the show on this because it's a bit off topic, Damon. And I feel like you might have an opinion on this one. I was hearing Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. Check him out. Good stuff he does over there. Talk about the Utah fan base in particular and how they're needed in the conference, but that they're psychos. And I think that's totally kind of what Travis Helm here is alluding to, is that, like, it's not, you can't really vibe with Utah fans. The people that are Utah fans online seem to just be crazy. Is that also your estimation of it? Yeah,
I mean, listen, Travis, we've dealt with Utah fans for a good while. Essentially, ever since Twitter has been a thing. That's about when Colorado and Utah were added to the Pac-12. I'd argue that almost the adding of Utah and Colorado to the Pac-12 has created this beast that has become Utah fans online, because the inception of them joining a major conference with, Twitter really like snowballing at the time probably created this devilish hellscape of a fan base that is the Utah Utes. But I agree. You need a bad guy. You need someone to point at and say they suck and that everybody agrees with. And yeah, I think generally for sure, like this, this podcast has experienced some back and forth with some BYU fans in particular, which is weird because I generally think I actually like get along pretty well with BYU fans. I think
BYU fans are chill.
I think they're pretty cool.
They can get a little overly fanatical, but
in that moment,
I get it.
I was like, is this just everybody from Utah? Is this just a Utah thing that breeds insane people? But which it might be to an extent, but for now, BYU's the good guys and Utah's the bad guys for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I'm excited for this game on Saturday. Thank you all for joining us today on this preview episode of Arizona versus Iowa State. Thank you to Alec Busse. Thank you to Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you to Damon Dog. Thank you to each and every one of you guys and girls in the chat for leaving a like. And if you're an MVP, shout out to you. Special salute goes out to you as well. Nick, you are about an hour, 9 minutes late, but you can go back to the start and watch it all over. So better late than never, our friend Nick Arenas in the chat. Damon, what else you got before we get out of here?
Nothing much, Kevin. Of course, we will be live tomorrow on a Friday at 2 p.m. We're going to be giving our full gambling slate, which if you guys have been keeping
I was already looking at it last night.
If you guys have been keeping track, the boys have been just printing money over here at the AZ Wildcats pod. We'll look to continue to do so with our college football betting show tomorrow, as well as 1 day away from Saturday's Arizona versus Iowa State kickoff. But Justin Spears will be on. He'll give his official predictions. We're going to have a great time. Make sure that you guys are there at 2 p.m. Or you'll get Mark Tardy, like Nick Arenas did at the end of this one.
And Nick's not an MVP, so we can't just erase the Tardy slips. Like with
our
guy
special
Max,
benefits in that circumstance.
If Max or Deborah or any of the other MVPs in the chat, hell, even myself, if I show up to the show late, we'll push it to the side. We'll forget it. But our guy Nick, hey, become an MVP, we can erase that from your record. But until then, it stays on.
Absolutely. You can follow Kevin at KevoPost. That's KEVOPOSTS. You can follow me at Damon Dog. That's DAMONDAWG. And appreciate everybody for being here. Drop a like on this video if you haven't done so yet. Helps us out so much more than you know. Rate and review on your favorite podcasting platform. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'm Damon. He's Kevin. We're the AZ Wildcats podcast, and we'll catch you on a Friday episode at 2 p.m. Until then, peace out. Bear down.
And go Cats. Let's go cyclone hunting this weekend. Bring on the storm.